Social media is a very powerful tool, but we're here because every parent I know, and I think every parent in America, is terrified about the garbage that is directed at our kids. I have 2 teenagers at home, and the phones they have are portals to predators, to viciousness, to bullying, to self-harm. And each of your companies could do a lot more to prevent it. Mr. Zuckerberg, in June of 2023, the Wall Street Journal reported that Instagram's recommendation systems were actively connecting pedophiles to accounts that were advertising the sale of child sexual abuse material. In many cases, those accounts appeared to be run by underage children themselves, often using code words and emojis to advertise illicit material. In other cases, the accounts included indicia that the victim was being sex trafficked. Now, I know that Instagram has a team that works to prevent the abuse and exploitation of children online. But what was particularly concerning about the Wall Street Journal expose was the degree to which Instagram's own algorithm was promoting the discoverability of victims for pedophiles seeking child abuse material. In other words, this material wasn't just living on the dark corners of Instagram. Instagram was helping pedophiles find it by promoting graphic hashtags, including hashtag pedwhore and hashtag preteen sex, to potential buyers. Instagram also displayed the following warning screen to individuals who were searching for child abuse material. These results may contain images of child sexual abuse. And then you gave users 2 choices: get resources or see results anyway. Mr. Zuckerberg, what the hell were you thinking?
All right, Senator. The basic science behind that is that when people are searching for something that is problematic, it's often helpful to, rather than just blocking it, to help direct them towards something that that could be helpful for getting them to get help.
In what, I understand get resources. In what sane universe is there a link for see results anyway?
Well, because we might be wrong. We try to trigger this warning, or we tried to, when we think that there's any chance that the results.
Okay, you might be
harmful.
wrong. Let me ask you: how many times was this warning screen displayed?
I don't know, but the
you don't know. Why don't you know?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. But
well, you know what, Mr. Zuckerberg? It's interesting you say you don't know it off the top of your head, because I asked it in June of 2023 in an oversight letter, and your company refused to answer. Will you commit right now to, within 5 days, answering this question for this committee?
We'll follow up on that.
Is that a yes? Not a will follow up. I know how lawyers write statements saying we're not going to answer. Will you tell us how many times this warning screen was displayed? Yes or no?
Senator, I'll personally look into it. I'm not sure if we have.
Okay, so you're refusing to answer that. Let me ask you this. How many times did an Instagram user who got this warning that you're seeing images of child sexual abuse, how many times did that user click on see results anyway? I want to see that.
Senator, I'm not sure if we stored that, but I'll personally look into this and we'll follow up after.
And what follow-up did Instagram do when you have a potential pedophile clicking on, I'd like to see child porn? What did you do next when that happened?
Senator, I think that an important piece of context here is that any context that we think is child sexual
Mr. Zuckerberg,
abuse,
that's called a question. What did you do next when someone clicked, you may be getting child sexual abuse images, and they click see results anyway? What was your next step? You said you might be wrong. Did anyone examine, was it in fact child sexual abuse material? Did anyone report that user? Did anyone go and try to protect that child? What did you do next?
Senator, we take down anything that we think is sexual abuse material on the service, and we do.
Did anyone verify whether it was in fact child sexual abuse material?
Senator, I don't know if every single search result we're following up on, but
Did you report the people who wanted it?
Senator, do you want me to answer your question?
Yeah, I want you to answer the question I'm asking. Did you report
time to
the
speak,
people who click see results anyway?
That's probably one of the factors that we use in reporting. And in general, I mean, we've reported more people and done more reports like this to NCMEC, the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, than any other company in the industry. We proactively go out of our way across our services to do this and have made, I think it's more than 26 million reports, which is more than the whole rest of the industry combined. So,
Mr. Zuckerberg, your company and every social media company needs to do much more to protect children.
Mr. Zuckerberg, let me start with you. Did I hear you say in your opening statement that there's no link between mental health and social media use?
Senator, what I said is I think it's important to look at the science. I know people widely talk about this as if that is something that's already been proven. And I think that the bulk of the scientific evidence does not support that.
Well, really, let me just remind you of some of the science from your own company. Instagram studied the effect of your platform on teenagers. Let me just read you some quotes from the Wall Street Journal's report on this. Company researchers found that Instagram is harmful for a sizable percentage of teenagers, most notably teenage girls. Here's a quote from your own study. Quote, "We make body image issues worse for 1 in 3 teen girls." Here's another quote. "Teens blamed Instagram," this is your study, "for increases in the rate of anxiety and depression. This reaction was unprompted and consistent across all groups." That's your study.
Senator, we try to understand the feedback and how people feel about the services. We can improve.
Wait a minute. Your own study says that you make life worse for 1 in 3 teenage girls. You increase anxiety and depression. That's what it says. And you're here testifying to us in public that there's no link. You've been doing this for years. For years, you've been coming in public and testifying under oath that there's absolutely no link. Your product is wonderful. The science is nascent, full speed ahead, while internally, you know full well your product is a disaster for teenagers.
Senator,
and yet you keep right on doing what you're doing. Right?
That's not true. That's not true.
Let me show you some other facts I know that you're familiar with. Wait a minute. That's not a question. That's not a question. Those are facts, Mr. Zuckerberg. That's not a question.
Those aren't facts.
Let me show you some more facts. Here's some information from a whistleblower who came before the Senate, testified under oath in public. He worked for you. It's a senior executive. Here's what he showed he found when he studied your products. So, for example, this is girls between the ages of 13 and 15 years old. 37% of them reported that they had been exposed to nudity on the platform unwanted in the last 7 days. 24% said that they had experienced unwanted sexual advances. They've been propositioned in the last 7 days. 17% said they had encountered self-harm content pushed at them in the last 7 days. Now, I know you're familiar with these stats because he sent you an email where he lined it all out. I mean, we've got a copy of it right here. My question is, who did you fire for this? Who got fired because of that?
Senator, we study all of this because it's important and we want to improve our services.
Well, you just told me a second ago you studied it, that there was no linkage. Who did you fire?
I said you mischaracterized.
37% of teenage girls between 13 and 15 were exposed to unwanted nudity in a week on Instagram. You knew about it. Who did you fire?
Senator, this is why we're building all
Who did you fire?
Tools. Senator, I don't think that's...
Who did you fire?
I'm not going to answer that.
Because you didn't fire anybody, right? You didn't take any significant action.
It's appropriate to talk about like individual
it's not appropriate.
HR decisions.
Do you know who's sitting behind you? You've got families from across the nation whose children are either severely harmed or gone, and you don't think it's appropriate to talk about steps that you took? The fact that you didn't fire a single person? Let me ask you this. Have you compensated any of the victims?
Sorry?
Have you compensated any of the victims? These girls, have you compensated them?
I don't believe so.
Why not? Don't you think they deserve some compensation for what your platform has done? Help with counseling services, help with dealing with the issues that your services caused?
Our job is to make sure that we build tools to help keep people safe.
Are you going to compensate them?
Senator, our job and what we take seriously is making sure that we build industry-leading tools to find harmful
make
content,
money.
take it off the services,
To make money.
and to build tools that empower parents.
So you
that
didn't
help
take
work
any
with-
action. You didn't
That's
take
not
any
true,
action.
Senator.
You didn't fire anybody. You haven't
not true.
compensated a
That's
single
not-
victim.
that's
Let
not
me
what I
ask you
said.
this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now?
Well-
They're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry for everything that you have all gone through. It's terrible. No one should have to go through the things that your families have suffered. And this is why we invest so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
You know, why, Mr. Zuckerberg, why should your company not be sued for this? Why is it that you can claim, you hide behind a liability shield, you can't be held accountable? Shouldn't you be held accountable personally? Will you take personal responsibility?
Senator, I think I've already answered this. I mean, these
Well,
are
try
serious
this again.
issues.
Will you take personal responsibility?
Senator, I view my job and the job of our company as building the best tools that we can to keep our community safe.
Well, you're failing at
and
that.
Well, Senator, we're doing an industry-leading effort. We build AI
Oh,
tools
nonsense. Your product is killing people. Will you personally commit to compensating the victims? You're a billionaire. Will you commit to compensating the victims? Will you set up a compensation fund
Senator,
with your
I
money?
think these are
With your money.
complicated- Senator, these are complicated
Yes,
issues.
that's not a complicated question, though. That's a
Senator,
yes or no.
this is-
Will you set up a victims' compensation fund with your money, the money you made on these families sitting behind you? Yes or no?
Senator, I don't think that's my job is to
Sounds
make sure
like a
that we
no.
build good tools. My
Sounds
job
like a
is
no.
to make sure that
Your job is to be responsible for what your company has done. You've made billions of dollars on the people sitting behind them. Are you here? You've done nothing to help them. You've done nothing to compensate them. You've done nothing to put it right. You could do so here today, and you should.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to each of you for coming. And I know some of you had to be subpoenaed to get here, but we do appreciate that you all are here. Mr. Chu, I want to come to you first. We've heard that you're looking at putting a headquarters in Nashville and likewise in Silicon Valley and Seattle. And what you're going to find probably is that the welcome mat is not going to be rolled out for you in Nashville like it would be in California. There are a lot of people in Tennessee that are very concerned about the way TikTok is basically building dossiers on our kids, the way they are building those on their virtual you. And also that information is held in China, in Beijing, as you responded to Senator Blumenthal and I last year in reference to that question. And we also know that a major music label yesterday said they were pulling all of their content off your site because of your issues on payment, on artificial intelligence, and because of the negative impact on our kids' mental health. So we will see how that progresses. Mr. Zuckerberg, I want to come to you. We have just had, Senator Blumenthal and I, of course, have had some internal documents and emails that have come our way. One of the things that really concerned me is that you referred to your young users in terms of their lifetime value of being roughly $270 per teenager. And each of you should be looking at these kids. Their T-shirts they're wearing today say, I'm worth more than $270. We've got some standing up in those T-shirts. Now, and some of the children from our state, some of the children, the parents that we have worked with, just to think whether it is Becca Schmidt, David Mollick, Sarah Flatt, Annalie Schote, would you say that life is only worth $270? What could possibly lead you? I mean, I listened to that. I know you're a dad. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmom. And how could you possibly even have that thought? It is astounding to me. And I think this is one of the reasons that states, 42 states, are now suing you because of features that they consider to be addictive, that you are pushing forward. And in the emails that we've got from 2021 that go from August to November, there is the staff plan that is being discussed. And Antigone Davis, Nick Clegg, Sheryl Sandberg, Chris Cox, Alex Schultz, Adam Masseri are all on this chain of emails on the well-being plan. And then we get to one, Nick did email Mark for emphasis, to emphasize his support for the package, but it sounds like it lost out to various other pressures and priorities. See, this is what bothers us. Children are not your priority. Children are your product. Children you see as a way to make money. And children, protecting children in this virtual space, you made a conscious decision. Even though Nick Clegg and others were going through the process of saying, this is what we do. These documents are really illuminating. And it just shows me that growing this business, expanding your revenue, what you were going to put on those quarterly filings, that was the priority. The children were not. It's very clear. I want to talk with you about the pedophile ring because that came up earlier, and the Wall Street Journal reported on that. And one of the things that we found out was after that became evident, then you didn't take that content down. And it was content that showed that teens were for sale and were offering themselves to older men. And you didn't take it down because it didn't violate your community standards. Do you know how often a child is bought or sold for sex in this country? Every 2 minutes. Every 2 minutes, a child is bought or sold for sex. That's not my stat. That is a TBI stat. Now, finally, this content was taken down after a congressional staffer went to Meta's global head of safety. So would you please explain to me and to all these parents why explicit predatory content does not violate your platform's terms of service or your community standards?
Sure, Senator. Let me try to address all of the things that you just said. It does violate our standards. We work very hard to take it down.
Didn't take it down.
We've reported, I think it's more than 26 million examples of this kind of content.
Didn't take it down until a congressional staffer brought it up.
It may be that in this case we made a mistake and missed something.
I think you make a lot of mistakes.
But we
so
have
let's
we have
move
leading
on.
teams that
I want to
identify more
talk
than
with you about your Instagram Creators Program and about the push. We found out through these documents that you actually are pushing forward because you want to bring kids in early. You see these younger teenagers as valuable but an untapped audience, quoting from the emails, and suggesting teens are actually household influencers to bring their younger siblings into your platform, into Instagram. Now, how can you ensure that Instagram creators, your product, your program, does not facilitate illegal activities when you fail to remove content pertaining to the sale of minors? And it is happening once every 2 minutes in this country.
Senator, our tools for identifying that kind of content are industry leading. That doesn't mean we're perfect. There are definitely issues that we have, but we continue to
Mr.
invest a ton in it.
Zuckerberg, yes, there are a lot that is slipping through. It appears that you're trying to be the premier sex trafficking
Of course
site
not, Senator.
in this country.
Senator, that's ridiculous.
No, it
Senator,
is not ridiculous.
Of
You
course
want
we
to
don't
turn
want
around
this,
and
we
tell
don't want
these
this
people
content on our
that,
platforms, and
why don't you take it down?
We do take it
We
down.
are here discussing,
We do
we
more
need
work to
you
take it
all
down
to
than-
work
than-
with
than-
us.
than-
No, you're not. You are not. And the problem is, we've been working on this. Senator Welch is over there. We've been working on this stuff for a decade. You have an army of lawyers and lobbyists that have fought us on this every step of the way. You work with NetChoice, the Cato Institute, Taxpayers Protection Alliance, and Chamber of Progress to actually fight our bipartisan legislation to keep kids safe online. So are you going to stop funding these groups? Are you going to stop lobbying against this and come to the table and work with us? Yes or no?
Senator, we have a...
Yes or no?
Of course we'll work with you on the legislation.
Okay,
I mean,
the
it's
door
been hard
is
to-
open. We've got all these bills. You need to come to the table. Each and every one of you need to come to the table. And you need to work with us. Kids are dying.
Thank you all for being here. Mr. Spiegel, I see you hiding down there. What does yada, yada, yada mean?
I'm not familiar with the term, Senator.
Very uncool. Can we agree that what you do, not what you say, what you do is what you believe and everything else is just cottage cheese?
Yes, Senator.
You agree with that? Speak up. Don't be shy. I've listened to you today. I've heard a lot of yada, yada, yadaing. And I've heard you talk about the reforms you've made, and I appreciate them. And I've heard you talk about the reforms you're going to make. But I don't think you're going to solve the problem. I think Congress is going to have to help you. I think the reforms you're talking about to some extent are going to be like putting paint on rotten wood. And I'm not sure you're going to support this legislation. I'm not. The fact is that you and some of your internet colleagues who are not here are no longer, you're not companies, you're countries. You're very, very powerful. And you and some of your colleagues who are not here have blocked everything we have tried to do in terms of reasonable regulation. Everything from privacy to child exploitation. And in fact, we have a new definition of recession. A recession is when, we know we're in a recession when Google has to lay off 25 members of Congress. That's what we're down to. We're also down to this fact that your platforms are hurting children. I'm not saying they're not doing some good things, but they're hurting children. And I know how to count votes, and if this bill comes to the floor of the United States Senate, it will pass. What we're going to have to do, and I say this with all the respect I can muster, is convince my good friend Senator Schumer to go to Amazon, buy a spine online, and bring this bill to the Senate floor. And the House will then pass it. Now, that's one person's opinion. I may be wrong, but I doubt it. Mr. Zuckerberg, let me ask you a couple of questions. I might wax a little philosophical here. I have to hand it to you. You have convinced over 2 billion people to give up all of their personal information, every bit of it, in exchange for getting to see what their high school friends had for dinner Saturday night. That's pretty much your business model, isn't it?
It's not how I would characterize it. And we give people the ability to connect with the people they care about and to engage with the topics that they care about.
And you take this information, this abundance of personal information, and then you develop algorithms to punch people's hot buttons, and send and steer to them information that punches their hot buttons again and again and again to keep them coming back and to keep them staying longer. And as a result, your users see only one side of an issue. And so, to some extent, your platform has become a killing field for the truth, hasn't it?
I mean, Senator, I disagree with that characterization. We build ranking and recommendations because people have a lot of friends and a lot of interests, and they want to make sure that they see the content that's relevant to them. We're trying to make a product that's useful to people and make our services as helpful as possible for people to connect with the people they care about and the interests they care about.
But you don't
That's what we
show
do.
them both sides. You don't give them balanced information. You just keep punching their hot buttons, punching their hot buttons. You don't show them balanced information so people can discern the truth for themselves. And you rev them up so much that so often your platform and others becomes just cesspools of snark where nobody learns anything, don't they?
Well, Senator, I disagree with that. I think people can engage in the things that they're interested in and learn quite a bit about those. We have done a handful of different experiments and things in the past around news and trying to show content on a diverse set of perspectives. I think that there's more that needs to be explored there, but I don't think that we can solve that by ourselves. One of the things that I saw...
I'm sorry to cut you off, Mr. President, but I'm going to run out of time. Do you think your users really understand what they're giving to you, all their personal information, and how you process it and how you monetize it? Do you think people really understand?
Senator, I think people understand the basic terms. I mean, I think that there's... I actually think that a lot of people overestimate how much information
It's been
there
a
is that
couple of
we
years
have.
since we talked about this. Does your user agreement still suck?
I'm not sure how to answer that, Senator.
Can you still hide a dead body and all that legalese where nobody can find it?
Senator, I'm not quite sure what you're referring to, but I think people get the basic deal of using these services. It's a free service. You're using it to connect with the people you care about. If you share something with people, other people will be able to see your information. It's inherently, if you're putting something out there to be shared publicly or with a private set of people, you're inherently putting it out there. So I think people get that basic part of how the service works.
But Mr. Zuckerberg, you're in the foothills of creepy. You track people who aren't even Facebook users. You track your own people, your own users who are your product, even when they're not on Facebook. I'm going to land this plane pretty quickly, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's creepy. And I understand you make a lot of money doing it, but I just wonder if our technology is greater than our humanity. I mean, let me ask you this final question. Instagram is harmful to young people, isn't it?
Senator, I disagree with that. That's not what the research shows on balance. That doesn't mean that individual people don't have issues and that there aren't things that we need to do to help provide the right tools for people. But across all of the research that we've done internally, I mean, the survey that the senator previously cited, there are 12 or 15 different categories of harm that we asked teens if they felt that Instagram made it worse or better. And across all of them, except for the one that Senator Hawley cited, more people said that using Instagram
I've
made
got
the
to
different
land
issues
this
that they
plane,
face,
Mr. Zuckerberg.
either positive or.
We just have to agree to disagree. If you believe that Instagram, I know I'm not saying it's intentional, but if you agree that if you think that Instagram is not hurting millions of our young people, particularly young teens, particularly young women, you shouldn't be driving. It is. Thanks.